Hello, and welcome to the Radiant Mission Podcast. We are on a mission to encourage and inspire you as you're navigating through this life and with your relationship with Christ. My name is Rebecca Toomey, and today I am joined again by the handsomest co-host there is, my husband, Mike Toomey.
Oh, thanks, honey. Happy to be here. I'm so glad to be doing this with you.
Oh, thanks, babe. And you're the handsomest guy. I just can't get over how tan you are, too, on this setup that we have going on
Pretty sure
here.
it's the lighting. I don't think I'm that tan yet.
And with the shirt you have on, you look like you just got back from the beach, cabana.
This is my linen shirt, and it makes me feel like I'm living in the Caribbean, so I really like it a lot.
Speaking of linen, we need to get Rachel on here to talk about linen one day,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. I could talk about that too, because linen changed my life. My linen clothes are the most comfortable clothes that I own, and the linen sheets, I sleep like I'm in heaven.
Rachel got
Those
us
linen
on
sheets.
some linen, and she really got Mike on the linen. So we'll have an episode with Rachel and you where you guys can geek out about the linen.
Long story short, the vibrations are over 9,000. That's all you need to know.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, very scientific evidence. Thank you.
Totally. Well, thank you for joining me again. If you are listening and you just jumped into this series for the first time today, we're in a relationship series and it's focused on growing together. So far, we've discussed the 5 love languages and the crazy cycle from the book Love and Respect. And today we're honing in on what the Bible has to say about love, oneness, and loving like Christ. So you might remember that Mike and I mentioned that we have been in a marriage class at our church called Re-Engage. And this class has really inspired us, and especially on today's topic. But just as a disclaimer, I do not want to take anything away from Re-Engage because I think it's a great program that couples should do. So do the program. Listening to these episodes is not going to be Re-Engage. We're going to talk about some takeaways that Mike and I have learned from I almost said episode, from the series, but this isn't a reiteration of Re-Engage. So just want to make that clear for anybody. You can't get out of going to Re-Engage. You got to go because it really is a great thing, right? I mean, you didn't want to go.
Fantastic.
I'm going to call you out.
It's really fantastic. I'm so glad that we did do it. I didn't want to take on a commitment and go do something every night for, every week for however long, months. And I'm really glad that we did, because first of all, it's been a really nice time for us to connect and for us to spend time together and examine ourselves and examine our relationship and work on ourselves. But it's also been a nice time of fellowship too. We've met some nice people and feel like we're getting more plugged in at our church for doing it. And so it's been a really nice experience. Not to mention, we tend to go to Chick-fil-A on Tuesday right before.
Yeah.
And it's just been a nice time to go out. We take our kids and we go get our Chick-fil-A, and then we go to church and drop them off at childcare and have our nice little chat for Re-Engage. So it's been a great experience.
Yeah, I got to get that Lord's chicken before we go.
That's right.
The holy chicken. It really has been nice. And that was something that you and I were both very concerned about when we were considering doing this, is that it's every week for a long time, for months. I mean, we started in January and it's not done until May. So that's a long time to do a class. But what's interesting is we actually wanted to do this after we had our home birth with Ben. If you guys remember all the way back to episode 8, 9, I think it is, where we shared our birth stories, we went through some stuff at the end of our pregnancy with Ben, literally going into the day that Ben was born. There was some spiritual warfare that we were up against. There were some hard times. And then, we had our son the day that all this stuff happened. And then I'm postpartum going through a lot of the kind of just the recovery that comes after what happened in that scenario. And I'm not going to tell you guys because I'm going to have you go back and listen to those episodes. So,
Right.
or maybe you'll hear them in the future when we get to the episode on forgiveness. But anyway, that's all to say we were interested in going to re-engage after that happened. And when we reached out, it was supposed to happen in the summer. So he was born on March 30th, and they were doing a re-engage in the summer, but they didn't do it, which we were kind of, I know I was kind of like, oh man, like I felt like we really needed it at that time to go through that class. But interestingly, we were able to work together towards some reconciliation and forgiveness and get through that situation at that time. But that doesn't mean that I personally didn't feel like everything was completely resolved, in the sense that I knew that we could still benefit from some healing. And when we heard that re-engage was going to come up again, I'm like, let's do it. I want to do it. You're the one who actually told me about it because you got the email saying that they're going to do it this time. And we kind of went back and forth, and it's tough because, we didn't know if there was going to be childcare. And that was honestly going to be the deal breaker. If there was not childcare at church while this was happening, there was no way we were going to be able to make it work because we didn't have a babysitter. So it all worked out, and now we're in the class. And I think I agree with you that it's been great, even though we're in a much better place than we were the last time that they had the class when we would have done it. I think now is a good time because the heat of that is kind of reduced, it was reduced to a simmer.
Agreed. It would have been rough if we got into that first class.
Would
And
have
Benny
been
was
rough.
also real small. That would have been hard,
Oh yeah, it
Ben
would
being
have
a
been
real, like,
really hard
newborn
to
baby.
do. That's a good point. It would have been hard to do with a
I
newborn.
think the timing was right.
I wouldn't have wanted to leave him with people that young.
Yep.
So I
I
think
think the
it worked
timing
out
was right.
exactly
It
how it
worked out
needed to.
exactly the way it was supposed to.
Yeah, definitely. So that brings us to embracing oneness, which I think is very, very important. The most important thing, which is why I'm putting this first in our series on marriage, which interestingly, Reengage does talk about oneness, but I think it's at the end of their book. We haven't even addressed it in the class. So I feel like it needs to be addressed first, because I personally, this is my opinion. Hey, it's our series on marriage. So we're going to put it where we want to put it. And I think oneness is first. And the reason that I say that is because, listen to this. The following is said in the Bible, not once, not twice, but 4 times. You ready for this? Genesis 2:24. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Matthew 19:5. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Mark 10, verse 8. And the two shall become one flesh. They are no longer two, but one flesh. Ephesians 5:31. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So it's not just said once, it's reiterated multiple times throughout the Bible that when a man and a woman are married, they're becoming one. And I think that that is so super significant. There was an article that I came across that said that one flesh, it really echoes the language of the preceding verse. So we read Genesis 2:24, and what precedes that is Adam first meets Eve and exclaims, this one is bone of my bone and flesh from my flesh, in Genesis 2:23. Two becoming one in marriage involves uniting two whole and separate people into a new God designed and God purposed life. and the two shall become one flesh clause expresses the original purpose of marriage, to seal a permanent relationship between a husband and a wife. Jesus spoke of this union in a conversation with the Pharisees about divorce, but at the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. That was when it was said in Mark 10:6-9, but it's also said in Matthew 19. So we can extrapolate this idea many ways. But the word oneness is short and to the point. We are called to become one. And of course, that doesn't literally mean one person, like, think the same thoughts and have the same brain or anything like that. We're still individuals. And I think that that's the point. Men and women are different. We both have our strengths, we both have our weaknesses, and that really balances each other out. So what this means to me is that we're called to become teammates, or as the Bible would call it, helpmates. In Genesis 2:18, God made Adam a helpmate. Then the Lord God said, "It is not good that man should be alone. I will make a helper fit for him." So he chose the name and purpose for a reason. A husband and wife, we complete each other on the weaknesses and on the strengths and all that good stuff. So yeah, how can we become one? And that's really with learning to love like Christ. But I was wondering, before we get to that, what thoughts you have on this oneness topic.
I would say that we do truly complete each other, and that women and men are different and have different strengths and weaknesses, and they balance each other out. There's a lot of things, and we talked about this in some of the earlier episodes, about how you think differently than I do, and you notice things that I wouldn't, and you're more particular about certain things, and there's just so many things that you're different from me. And then there's other things that I think it's probably a strength that I'm able to filter out a lot of that stuff that you care about, to be able to just focus on the here and now of, like, maybe what's just important for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this passage, that two become one flesh, really spoke to me, that the man is to leave his father and his mother and cling to his wife. I think that's really a big point of growing up. It's a really big point of growing up, that the man finds his woman, and they start their own family. I think that's really significant. And without that, a lot of men might feel like they want to be Peter Pan and never grow up.
I think what you
And
mean by that is that you wanted to be Peter Pan.
yeah, I did want to be Peter Pan. And, I did think that, when you're, at least the way that I grew up, it was kind of just like, you're just doing whatever you want to do, and you're not worried about anything. Like, as long as you got your schoolwork done, or you got your, whatever it may be. There was a time where I knew that we were at a crossroads in our relationship, and either I was going to decide to go it alone and just, like, do whatever I wanted to do, which wouldn't have been much, or decide to get married and to start a family. And that's why you get married, right? You get married so you have this partner for life, and you're going to start a family. And there was a part of me that was like, oh man, like, do I really, am I too young to make this decision, and all that. It wasn't easy, but I think that passage really spoke to me, and said, this is the time. This is what we're called to do. God calls us to do this. And it gave me a lot of strength.
What he's trying to say is there are a lot of voices from the world and from the enemy that tell us, oh, you don't need to get married. You don't need a woman. You don't need a man. This is our culture today. This is society today, is like, just date forever. You could just be single, be independent. You don't need nobody except for yourself, and just love yourself. And that, unfortunately, is such a lie and such a falsity. And it's so perpetuated in our society that people buy into this and they believe it without knowing or really getting to experience just how beautiful it can be to be married and to work together as a team. You literally have somebody that's there for you no matter what. They are by your side. They're your ride or die, as they say. They're your person. And God has a person for each of us, and that is our spouse. Our spouse is our person. And I think that it's sad that society perpetuates this whole stay single. Then it's so much easier. You can just, do whatever you want. And clinging to your wife and becoming one flesh, I think it's awesome, honestly.
Yeah, it's honestly, that's the attack on the family. That's the attack on the family is,
Yeah.
oh, you should just worry about yourself,
Mm-hmm.
just care about yourself, do whatever you want. It's the attack on the family.
And I can say that we could say, I think you and I can both say the same thing, that there's the same enemy attack on marriages too, that there are people that experience those voices that tell them, well, maybe she's not the one. Maybe he's not the one. Maybe there's someone better for you. Or maybe there's this scenario, or he doesn't treat you good. He doesn't treat you good enough. She doesn't treat you right. And these are all lies that we're being told, when the truth is we need to work together as a team and come together and grow together and work through this stuff and not let the enemy tear us apart, because there is nothing that he wants more than to seek and destroy God's beautiful creation. God loves marriage. And so it makes sense that Satan would want to attack it. Rachel said this very well when she talked to us when we were going through our spiritual warfare stuff. Something similar to that effect. He wants nothing more than to destroy your marriage. He would love to see you guys fall apart, because then it would destroy your children. And then now he's got your children too. So I thought that was really a significant thing. And there's something beautiful about choosing each other, because here's the thing too, at the end of the day, like, you don't want to be an enemy with your spouse. Why would you want to live with an enemy? Why would you want to live with somebody every day that you're against, when you have the choice to do the opposite, that you can be together, fighting together in the same war against this world, or whatever you want to say? We're a team, right?
That's right. We are a team.
Yeah. So let's talk about learning to love like Christ. We did learn this in Reengage, that part of this comes from recognizing our inability to love effectively. So it's pretty interesting that we talked about these love languages and love and respect, and it's all about love, love, love. Because now we're going to talk about what the Bible says about love. And it's pretty much impossible to love the way that the Bible defines love, because God gives us an outline of this, that we are to do these things, but we are constantly falling short because we're broken people and we're always going to fall short of this standard. So 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7, this is probably, a lot of people get married and this verse is at their wedding. So most everybody has probably heard this before, but I'd like you to listen to this with the lens of, am I doing this? Am I achieving this right now in my marriage? Love is patient. Love is kind. It is not jealous. It does not brag. It is not arrogant. It does not act disgracefully. It does not seek its own benefit. It is not provoked. Does not keep an account of wrong suffered. It does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. It keeps every confidence. It believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. It's pretty difficult to be all of these things all the time, isn't it?
I'll say.
I think one that might stick out to a lot of people is love does not keep an account of wrongs.
That stuck out to me too.
And it also is probably the version that I chose of this because it says, does not keep an account of wrongs suffered. It's so easy to get into a fight and say, you do this to me. Actually, you just did this to me. You just did this to me. And remember when you did this and this and this?
Yep.
And remember
You
when I
just
did that?
got that list of dirt.
Well, guess what? Love doesn't keep the record. So we're going to have to light that one on fire.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can you just burn it? Burn it and bury it?
Yeah. Burn it and bury it and push it off into a boat over a cliff.
That'd be good.
So that's how we're called to love. In 1 John 4, verses 7 through 21, it says this: Beloved, let's love one another, for love is from God, and everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. The one who does not love does not know God, because God is love. By this, the love of God was revealed in us, that God sent his only Son into the world so that we may live through him. In this is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us, and he sent his Son to be the propitiation for our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God remains in us, and his love is perfected in us. By this we know that we remain in him and he in us, because he has given us his Spirit. We have seen and testify that the Father has sent the Son to be the Savior of the world. Whoever confesses that Jesus is the Son of God, God remains in him and he in God. We have come to know and have believed the love which God has for us. God is love, and the one who remains in love remains in God, and God remains in him. By this, love is perfected with us, so that we may have confidence in the day of judgment, because as he is, we are also in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear involves punishment, and the one who fears is not perfected in love. We love because he first loved us. If someone says, I love God, and yet hates his brother or sister, he is a liar. For the one who does not love his brother or sister whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. And this commandment we have from him, that the one who loves God must also love his brother and sister. So that's fascinating, because I feel like there was a lot of repetition in that multiple verses, in that text. But I think that it was for a reason, because it was reiterating over and over again, God is love. God is love. If you truly are loving like God, you will understand he sent his son to die. And so, what are you doing? You can't even forgive your brother or your sister. It was a fascinating to kind of reread this a couple of times recently. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a really beautiful passage. And we just went through this in Reengage not too long ago. And I remember I had a moment where it really spoke to me that God so loved us that he sent his only son to die for us. And that is just so significant. It's such a beautiful thing that we are called to love as well. If he could love us imperfect and broken then we should be able to love as well. That's
Mhm.
kind of my takeaway from this.
Mhm. Well, I think in order to really even put this to some extra context, we've been studying Matthew a lot lately, you and I. And the context of Jesus's death is horrifying when you really read into how he died and just the torture that he went through physically being on a cross. I mean, literally suffocating to death and crying out to the Lord, to his Father, to end that suffering. And he knew that this was going to happen to him. It was prophesied long before, and he said it many times, like he knew exactly what was going to happen to him. So it's not like he didn't know that this moment was going to happen, and then it was happening, and he cried out to his Father. And it's so heartbreaking. And yet he went through this and experienced all of this for us, and not just for us, but for our grandparents, our parents, those that came before us and those that will come after us. And that's just something that I think has really moved me recently, in reading the story of Jesus's death and crucifixion. It's heartbreaking. My parents actually just went to Israel recently, and I was talking to my dad after the trip, and something he said to him that really, he said, broke his heart and really made him feel upset was when he went to the site where Jesus was crucified, that he thought for some reason that Jesus would have been on a cross on the top of a hill, like, on a top of a mountain for all to see. But when he got to the site, he learned no, that Jesus was hung on the side by the street, lowly, like, a thief or somebody would have been put on a cross. And he said it made him feel a lot of emotion, just so much sadness to think of our Savior, put down here in this lowly place as he died for us. And that really, just moved me. And I think that we can't talk about love unless we talk about Jesus Christ, because he is the epitome of love. He gave the ultimate sacrifice. How many of us would do the same? How many of us would sacrifice ourselves physically, emotionally, spiritually for another person or for the whole world?
It is really moving to think about the brutal death of Jesus, and especially with Easter coming soon. And we've been walking through the book of Matthew, and now we're at the time of his crucifixion. It's so hard to think about. And what I've been really reflecting on recently is it's really interesting because it's such a mystery. Like, why did it have to be this way? Why was it written that it would happen in this way? And it's something that I've really learned to just kind of surrender on and have faith about, because I don't think that any of us could really fully understand why it had to be this way or how it happened like this,
Well, it's too bad
but it's
Rachel's here.
something
She
that
would
we just
explain
have
it.
to have faith.
It's too bad Rachel's not here. She would explain it to you.
Well, I don't think it really needs to be explained because I understand what happened,
Well,
but it's
I'm just saying
just
from the context of the Old Testament and God. Okay, so let's go backwards to Adam and Eve. And they were presented in this perfect world. And the Lord said, There's only one thing that you can't do, and it's eat this fruit. And then we ate the fruit. And after that was when sin was introduced and we were given free will, and we had the choice to make after that. And God set laws into place, which is what we just got out of this series on. Well, a little bit ago, there was a series that we did on the biblical feasts where we talk a little bit about the Old Testament or the Torah and some of the laws that God put in place. And here's what happened that was so sad, but also not surprising, is that God would say, I would like you to follow these things and do them this way. And we would fail because we're human beings and we're terrible. And so we would fail. And then, we would come in and say, okay, well, the Lord would say, all right, okay, do it like this or do these things. And it just is the crux of humanity, is that we do not know how to make the right choices time and time again. We are constantly pulled in and sucked in by the enemy. And we allow the enemy to guide us or to even worship him in some ways when it comes to certain things. And this was the only way that God could sanctify us, was through his son, through this sacrifice, because we can't do it. We're incapable. We as humans are not capable of being like Christ. As hard as we try, we will continue to fail and we'll continue to sin. And this was the only way for us to get there. And so I think in some ways, I guess what I'm saying is that there is an answer to it. There is the mystery part of it being, well, it's horrifying and horrible that it had to take something this painful and, horrific in order for us to get there. But I think that's the whole point, right? That one man sacrificed himself for us.
Yeah, it's a holy mystery. It is definitely a mystery.
It's still a mystery.
It's definitely still a mystery. Absolutely. I think it goes beyond our understanding. Because even with all that explanation, you could still say, but why? But why did it have to be this way?
I guess we'll have to agree to disagree.
That's fine. And maybe one day we'll find out.
Well, we will. But I'd like to circle us back now, since we're talking about marriage, to love and oneness. And I think that now we can see that it's impossible to love like Christ because, first of all, we can't even follow the things in 1 Corinthians, which are a lot simpler than the Lord sacrificing his one and only son. And I think that that is why this is so significant. This topic of oneness to me is because if the Lord calls us to leave our father and our mother and become one flesh with our spouse, that's the least that we can do, is to strive for that oneness, to strive to be the best team and helpmate that we can be. Because if we can't, we're not always going to love perfectly. We know this. We fail on those fronts all the time. But the very best that we can do is strive to, grow together.
Agreed. It's very interesting, love, because we can't love perfectly as Jesus loved us and God loves us. We can't love totally perfectly. But when you really think about love makes allowances and goes beyond. When you true love is unconditional love. And I think that's the whole idea behind grace, is that we're given grace even if we're undeserving, we're still loved. And we're called to do the same for our spouse, even when we're not perfect. And things go wrong, we're still called to love, and it's unconditional. That, to me, that's the biggest thing in a marriage, is unconditional love. And for your kids too. You need to love them unconditionally. And if they're doing things that make you mad, you have to correct them. That it's your job to correct them and to teach them the way.
Yeah. It's not your job to just let them do whatever they want.
Nope.
We'll have to do a parenting series after this marriage series, huh?
It's a good idea.
I think so, because there's a lot to be learned, especially from young children. We haven't had the pleasure of parenting teenagers yet, and there's a whole new world ahead of us.
Parenting is interesting, not to get us off topic, because I do think that that's got enough material to make a whole series of. But parenting, to me, no one needs to teach you how to be a parent. You kind of just know when you have a kid how to be a parent. And any of the problems that you have in parenting are really problems that you have, like, that you need to
Mm,
correct about yourself.
mm,
I think, it's
yeah.
really, your own attitude and your own laziness or whatever it may be. Like, that's what gets reflected in your kids. I
That's a
don't think
really good
any book or
point.
anybody could teach you how to be a parent.
Well, they can help. Some of it can help. But that's a great point, because I think that that's something that people are coming into in this on our generation, I would say, millennials and forward are recognizing how important it is that to understand that children, especially young children, under the age of 5 or 6, they can't even self-regulate their own feelings and emotions. And we expect them to be able to. We can't even regulate our own feelings and emotions as adults. And we have these high expectations of children to act in ways that we want them to act, when the truth, it's us that has the problem. It's
Absolutely.
us that wants them to be quieter or whatever it might be, to act a certain way, to not overreact. And you could say that it's an easy reference with a toddler, right? When a toddler's having, a meltdown about something. And when you find out the meltdown is really because they had a rock in their shoe, like, wow, why did you act like this? They don't know how else to act. They're 3 years old. They're still trying to figure out the world. It's us who are, like you said, impatient or lazy or not understanding enough to them. But I think that there's a lot to be learned about parenting when it comes to marriage too. There are correlations that we find. And I think that this is something that you and I have discovered, is in us working on our marriage, we're also seeing things in our children that we're like, oh, wow, we do this to our daughter. I'll give a quick example. We were talking about invalidation and how it's not good to invalidate your spouse when they tell you something is wrong, or, they feel a certain way, not to invalidate their feelings. And Mike and I were like, man, you do that a lot to Brooke. You invalidate her a lot. And I think that there is a psychological perspective to that, because you think that it would be easier to convince her of something otherwise. But the truth is, she's just a little woman, she's just a little girl. And just like a grown woman would feel invalidated, a little girl feels invalidated too when her feelings are pushed down. So there's a lot that can be learned when we really dive into the marriage stuff that helps us in parenting too, I think.
I definitely agree. And I would say, to really tie in all of this together with marriage and parenting and oneness, this is something I told you a long time ago, and I'll share it at the risk of sounding totally crazy, I'll do my best to try to explain this. But sometimes I feel like my life, I'm in the Truman Show, and the whole world revolves around me, and my actions and attitude impact everyone and everything around me. And many times, if I can correct my own attitude, it makes you better and it makes our children better. And just everything is overall better. Like that, everything really is because of me. And maybe that's everyone else's experience too. I don't know. But I definitely feel that way. Like when we have problems, it's something that I can fix, that I can meet you halfway and be nicer, show you more love and respect, and diffuse a situation. And the same thing with our kids. Like trying to change Brooke and her actions doesn't really work as much as if I change myself and I'm nicer and happier, I get a better reaction from her. And that's to me, like that's kind of this oneness thing,
Yeah.
is that really the way that I act is impacting you as well.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a bad attitude, it'd be very easy for you to have a bad attitude too.
That's a good point. If we all treat scenarios as if I'm the one to solve this, and all of us are functioning from that same mindset, I'm solving this, we would be in a much better place. And who told you were in the Truman Show? They're going to get in big trouble.
It's just a feeling. It's
They're
just a
going
feeling sometimes
nobody
that I
better,
realize if
nobody
something's
better
off
tell
about
him.
you,
Don't tell him.
it really, like, it is true. If something's off about you, nothing that I try to do to change you can fix it. Like the best way that I've found to fix things in our relationship and in our household is for me to fix myself first. Like,
Man, that's some radical responsibility. It is, though.
yeah.
And it does work. I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to change your marriage, be like Mike and take responsibility for every problem.
Everything. It's
All of
always the
it.
husband's fault.
All of it. It's always the husband's fault.
I can take the blame.
I'm going to put this as a direct quote clip on the internet. It's always the husband's fault.
That's the key to a happy marriage right there.
Is what?
Is it's always the husband's fault.
You mean the husband saying it's my fault?
No, just in
Just accusing
general,
the
as
husband?
long as the husband takes the blame, then things will be good.
Okay. All right, good. This is a great place for us to wrap this up. It's always the husband's fault. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. No. No,
Sorry,
I really,
husbands, but you gotta just take it. You have to shoulder it sometimes.
yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that, but
I know you are.
I don't know if all these other husbands are going to be okay with that. I just,
Happy wife, happy life.
yes, I just want to encourage everyone. The closer that you are moved together, the more effort that you move together and to do things for one another, the better your relationship will be. And Mike is an example of this because he has chosen to take responsibility for every problem and just accept it and put it all on his back. Hopefully he doesn't keep it there.
Oh, it rolls right off my back. I am good.
Good. Anything you want to leave listeners with today?
It's biblical to become one. Marriage is biblical, and it's really a beautiful thing. It's the most beautiful gift that I've received in my life, is having a
Oh,
partner and having a friend and starting our family. It's all the responsibility and holes that a man is trying to fill with work and a career and all that. truly the most fulfilling thing that I've found in my life is having a wife and having our children. So it's just beautiful. It's beautiful.
Oh, that's so sweet. I agree. I concur. It's the best thing ever. I love being
It
married.
is. It is. You've given me purpose. You've given me more purpose than I've ever had. And life becomes about more than just yourself when you're married, when you're in a relationship. And that's truly, I think, what we're called to do. Because if we're just being selfish and we only care about ourselves, that's worldly and unfulfilling, but starting a family, this is what we're meant to do.
Yeah, I'll take it. Well, thank you for being on another marriage episode. I appreciate you. I recognize and appreciate you. That's
And thank
a
you, honey.
office reference for anybody who likes The Office.
Thank you for recognizing and appreciating me.
Anytime, honey. And thank you for tuning in and being on this journey with us. If you'd like to follow along outside the podcast, join the mission on Instagram or Facebook at The Radiant Mission. Or, of course, you can also watch this in YouTube form as well. And today we are going to close with Psalm 139, verses 23 through 24. Search me, God, and know my heart. Put me to the test and know my anxious thoughts, and see if there are any hurtful way in me, and lead me in the everlasting way. We're wishing you a radiant week, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.